What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. So I'm on a little bit of a time crunch this week, guys, with the availability I have to record. So I thank you all for tuning in. This is going to be a great episode, especially with recent NFL news, which we're going to get into. But first, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for allowing me another day on his beautiful earth. I thank him and praise him every single day for the life that I live and the life that I have. And he's the sole reason that I'm here and I'm able to do all the fun things that, you know, he's blessed me with. So I really hope you all have a blessed day. And without hesitating anymore, let's get right into it. So big news in the NFL world. We have news out of Cleveland, which, you know, that's not a shock. Cleveland's usually notorious for being in the NFL news 99% of the time for bad things because of how inept and, you know, what a dumpster fire the Cleveland Browns organization is in general. But we got big trade news. Defensive end Myles Garrett is being traded to the Los Angeles Rams for defensive end Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round pick, 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. So that took me and probably a lot of people by surprise. And I couldn't believe it when I first saw it. Usually when it comes to big-time trades, you know, when it comes to superstars, I really kind of have to think twice or do a double take on it. Similar situation when years ago, well, actually it would be a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, where Anthony Davis and the Lakers parted ways because they traded for Luka Doncic. So that was the one thing that kind of took me off guard. So this is kind of like that level of shock to me. But at the same time, I can kind of see it coming because Cleveland, let's be honest about the Cleveland Browns. They're not Super Bowl contenders. They're probably a distant fourth in the AFC North at this point in time. They don't really have much going for them other than the fact that they got a bunch of picks now. And here's the thing. Myles Garrett, everybody considers him the modern day Lawrence Taylor. At least I do. He is a sack master and one of the best defensive ends that we've ever seen play. You know, if you're making a list of the top pass rushers to enter the NFL in the past 30 years, Myles Garrett's more than likely in your top 5. And if he's not, he's pretty close. So Myles Garrett joins the already loaded Los Angeles Rams. And this is probably the biggest all-in push I've seen an NFL team make in their Super Bowl window. If you think about the Rams, they were 1 or 2 plays away from beating Seattle in the NFC Championship game. Unfortunately, it did not go that way. But if they ended up beating Seattle, more than likely they would have beat New England. So they came within 2 plays of being in the Super Bowl and more than likely winning it. So why not? Matthew Stafford's probably got a year, maybe 2 left of his prime. You know, the Super Bowl window is very, you know, it's close to I wouldn't say close to being shut for the Rams, but this is their prime window. They are hands-on Super Bowl favorites now because of this trade. They already traded a first-round pick for cornerback Trent McDuffie from the Kansas City Chiefs, so that already solved their secondary issue from last year. You know, of course, you got Cameron Kitchens at the safety position. You still got a bunch of solid cornerback position players, but you need that superstar, that lockdown corner, like Jalen Ramsey was for 1 season for the Rams. So they got that in Trent McDuffie. Now they solidify that defensive line with a bunch of young, up-and-coming stars with a, you know, future Hall of Famer who's still in his prime, who literally just broke the sack record, beating TJ Watt and Michael Strahan's sack record from a year about, I think it was 2 years ago. TJ Watt set that record or tied that record, but either way, Myles Garrett coming off a career year, he looks to finally, you know, capture that elusive Lombardi Trophy and even that elusive playoff win, which Cleveland hasn't had since, I believe it was 2020, their last playoff victory that was when Baker Mayfield was still on the team, but that's neither here nor there. But this is probably the biggest all-in I've seen the Rams make, and I think it's I think it's worth it, specifically just because Myles Garrett is, you know, he's worth a first-round pick. He's probably worth 3 first-round picks. So, you know, Myles Garrett voiced his frustration being in Cleveland a long time ago before they made him the highest paid defensive player in the league. But obviously, there was no rumblings, but there were some rumors that maybe they would still move him. So they paid him, so they gave him his guaranteed money, and then they traded him. So they kind of did him two solids. They made him the highest paid player, and they also sent him to a bona fide Super Bowl contender and a bona fide Super Bowl favorite. So Myles Garrett, good for him. There's not much more you can say about Myles Garrett. He's a stud, great person, and one of the best we've ever seen in the NFL. Now he gets to be on a loaded Los Angeles Rams team and in their push to become Super Bowl champions, which more than likely, if you're placing bets today, my money would be on the LA Rams because they were very close last year, they were so close to beating Seattle last year. And if they would have beaten Seattle, guaranteed they would have beat New England because New England is, I think they were a little bit overhyped in who they had to play in the AFC side of the playoff bracket last year. But we'll talk about the Patriots in a little bit because they're on the other end of a trade, which we all knew was coming. But as far as right now, as for Cleveland in this situation, they are stacked with picks now. They'll have 2 first-round picks for next year's draft, which they can utilize to trade up for a quarterback, whether that be Arch Manning or somebody else that's coming out. But Jared Verse, let's not act like Jared Verse is a scrub by any means. He is not. Jared Verse is widely looked at as one of the best pass rushers and best defensive ends in the entirety of the NFL. When you're thinking about dominant defensive edges or dominant defensive linemen, mainly the edge rushers, but Myles Garrett, you got TJ Watt. I can barely think of anybody else that would top Jared Verse. He's so young. I believe he's still 3 years left in his rookie contract. So this is a prime opportunity for Jared Verse to, 1, earn himself a bag, and 2, maybe Cleveland can utilize this as well, knowing that they won't be as good this year. Because Myles Garrett, he's fantastic, but did it add many wins to Cleveland's total? No, because they're just so inept in every other place possible on the roster. So, good for Myles Garrett. He gets to go to a Super Bowl champion and a Super Bowl contending team, and Cleveland gets to load up for the future, which is probably, not shocking to most people. You hear that pretty much every other year, Cleveland loading up for the future. Well, they've done that plenty of times. So, but Jared Verse, it's still a solid get for Cleveland. He's gonna impact defense. He's gonna impact Cleveland's defense in the utmost possible positive way possible. So I have no shade towards Jared Verse at all. You can look at him. He's more than I feel like everybody would agree, a top 5 pass rusher or a top 5 edge or outside linebacker in the NFL. I think of him, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. There's very few on that, on that list. So what a big trade, monumental trade. And the Rams are pushing for another Lombardi Trophy as Matthew Stafford's career continues to tick down. He's probably got, this year, maybe next year left of his prime before, father time catches up to him. So we'll see how this goes. But huge news, Myles Garrett traded to the Los Angeles Rams, and his quest to finally capture a Lombardi now begins. All right, next, we're going to move on to the other trade that happened, which we all knew was happening, but it was just a matter of time. The Eagles agreed to trade A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots for a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. So they basically flip-flopped. They got what they paid for A.J. Brown. They basically rented A.J. Brown for these past, I think it's 4 to 5 years since they traded for him from Tennessee. So A.J. Brown, two-time Super Bowl champion, has led the team in receiving yards, even though it is abundantly clear and obvious how much A.J. Brown disliked being on Philadelphia. And I can't blame him, really. There's a short list of stud, number 1 wide receivers in this league, before you get to A.J. Brown. Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. You got Jamar Chase, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then who else? I would probably put A.J. Brown as a top 5 receiver in this league when, at his peak. His physical gifts are immaculate, and he's a stud receiver. Kind of a diva, like his former counterpart, DK Metcalf, and, among a bunch of other receivers in the league. But again, there's a lot of diva wide receivers out there. But A.J. Brown, one of the top wide receivers in the NFL, I would make that argument. He gets to go to the New England Patriots, who, they got a break with who they had to play in the playoffs. A broken, down Denver team. If Denver had Bo Nix, Denver would have been in the Super Bowl. That's just the reality of it. I think New England was maybe a year ahead of their time. I think another year under Drake May's belt will do him some good. It's going to be tough for New England to get back there because you still got Josh Allen and the Bills. They're reloading. You got the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. They're reloading. Joe Burrow will be back and healthy. Patrick Mahomes will be back and he's healthy. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. And you got scrappy other teams like the Steelers who, on any given Sunday, they could either lose to the worst team in the league or they can beat the absolute best team in the league. They did beat New England last year earlier in the season. So, it's not really too much of a shock that, the Patriots aren't really looked on as, heavyweight contenders for the AFC. I would still put them as, a possible contender. They did make the Super Bowl after all. But having that, pivotal number one option, that number one go-to, that's only going to increase the likelihood of getting back to a Super Bowl just because Drake May needs more help. A lot of his receivers, they're all young guys. Travion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State last year, was phenomenal. But again, he was a rookie. So there's only so much that you can do with that. I think the Eagles, it was about time. Everybody knew that it was going to happen. This was a long time coming, but I think the Eagles made a good decision because they still have Devontae Smith, the former Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama. He's easily a number one option. If A.J. Brown wasn't on the roster, Devontae Smith would get pretty much all the receiving yards and all the receptions. Devontae Smith is a true number one, I believe, on probably 15 to 20 other NFL teams. I'd want him on Pittsburgh, and I'd take him in a heartbeat, along DK Metcalf and other guys. But I think New England makes a smart choice. Give up those draft picks. It wasn't even that large of a haul. And for Philadelphia, you're a running team anyway. Jalen Hurts running the football and throwing. And then obviously Saquon Barkley, arguably the best running back in the entirety of the NFL. So the Eagles have been a run-first team for a long time, and even on their way to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they leaned heavily on Saquon Barkley and his 2,000 rushing yards. So A.J. Brown was really overshadowed by the Eagles' defense is just nasty and immaculate and fantastic. So loaded with studs on that team. So that overshadowed A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, naturally overshadows a lot of star players on most teams. I could think of guys like Trent McDuffie, cornerback from Kansas City. Mahomes is gonna outshine him 99% of the time. So, and then obviously Saquon Barkley overshadows A.J. Brown all the time, year in and year out. That's no shock because he's the best running back in the league and, a bona fide Hall of Famer one day, and he's a Super Bowl champion now. So Philadelphia, I think both of these trades that have happened with Myles Garrett going to Cleveland, Myles Garrett going to LA, and A.J. Brown going to New England, I think all these trades benefited both teams in a lot of different ways, especially the Eagles. You get rid of all that drama, get rid of all that locker room, drama and noise. Noisy locker rooms and noisy off seasons usually are like downfalls of teams, but it worked out in the end. I think that this was, these were two great trades made. I think that all four teams get better as a result, realistically, except Cleveland, even though they got a stud in Jared Verse. Jared Verse is like, I'd say 85% of what Myles Garrett is, which, any other team in the league, you'd take that too. But it's just the fact you're going from Myles Garrett, you're going from a generational, defensive end to Jared Verse, who in his own right is going to more than likely be one of the best pass rushers of his era. He's just not there yet. So that is some of the best NFL news that we've seen in quite a while. So let's transition a little bit of college football. And then we'll talk about a little bit of NBA, a little bit of NHL, but we're going to talk about I'm going to give my 2 cents about the college football, playoff being expanded yet again. So SEC Media Day wraps up last week, and there's a lot of people asking, of course, is the SEC going to get on board with 2014 playoff expansion? I think I speak for a lot of college football fans. I don't want 24 teams. You don't want 24 teams. But a lot of the coaches want 24 teams. A lot of the institutions want 24 teams. And it's simply because of a cash grab. You can't rationalize anything to me that this has to do with anything other than revenue potential. Which, listen, college football, like the NFL, like MLB, NBA, NHL, it don't matter. Soccer don't matter. It is a business. It's going to be run like a business, unfortunately. But that takes away from the beauty of the sport. In the NFL, it's kind of college football, in my opinion, is greater than the NFL, just because every single Saturday matters. Every single Saturday, can determine your entire season. I don't think it's a good thing to have in late November of the college football season, you have 20 teams viable to, make a playoff to run for the national championship. There's not 20 teams in the country that can win the national title. You know that, and I know that. I think if expansion's going to come, it's not a matter of if, but when. I think a 14 to 16 would be the perfect model, but think of it this way. The BCS era was from like 1998 to 2013. That was a long time. 15 years worth of college football. The 4-team playoff, 2014 to 2020, I think it was 2023. Yeah, 2024 to 2023. Long time. Well over 10 years. So almost 10 years. So how on earth are you going to say that the 12-team model doesn't work because of 1 year of controversy? I know why they're doing this, because you left teams like Notre Dame out last year, who more than likely could have won a national title last year. A lot of people would agree with that statement. Texas with Arch Manning, very viable. Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, very viable. Even a little bit further down, you get USC with Jada Maiyava, Lincoln Riley, great offense. Yeah, they're viable too. And then Michigan, a little less so, but still viable nonetheless. But is there really 20 teams, 24 teams that you think can win a national title? I'd make an argument that you can probably list 6 to 7, 6 to 8 teams that legitimately could win a national title. Maybe others can make noise in a playoff. I'm not saying it wouldn't or couldn't work to an extent, but if you try to, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, all the institutions clamoring for this playoff model to come to fruition, you can't tell me rationally why it would be better for college football in general. You pretty much, crapped on the bowl season. The bowl season's pretty much dead and non-existent. NIL is what it is. Unfortunately, that's just the landscape of college football now. Let's see. Bowl games, pretty much dead. The conference championship week will 100% die. If it goes to the 2014 playoff model, that eliminates conference championship weekend. You can make a playoff format that is honoring to the conference championship weekend and have it mean something, and you can also keep bowl season intact. There are ways of doing it. There are ways out there rather than just jump right into expanding to 24 teams. The 12-team playoff has been in here for 2 years. We've had 2 iterations of it. How are you going to sit here and tell me that the BCS with 15 years, the 4-team playoff with damn near a decade, but nearly 10 years worth. How are you going to tell me a sample size of 2 years is a bad model? For everything going on, the 12-team model has been such a success. It's just the right amount of drama. The problem is the group of five teams that got in last year. And realistically, if it wasn't for the ACC crappy tiebreaker methods that they had in place already, Notre Dame would have been in over a James Madison. Miami would have played in the ACC title game had the tiebreakers actually been, legitimately, non-stupid. I forget what rules there were for the ACC's tiebreakers, which was so stupid when they broke it down. But Miami would have been in the ACC title game. They more than likely would have beat Virginia. I'm willing to bet they would have. Miami was on a heater at the end of the year, smoking every team by 20. Notre Dame would have been in. James Madison would have been out. None of this controversy would be happening. I don't even think you would be talking about playoff expansion. Maybe rumblings of it, but you 100% would not be clamoring for a 24-team playoff right now. I'm sorry. I know I just went on a tangent, but there's no reason to expand to a 24-team playoff. I think the SEC is doing a good thing, and I believe it was a decision about a 24-team model won't be made until fall. So I'm going to assume probably around the time the playoff is going to happen and the next, selection Sunday. I think that's when that stuff will happen, but that's neither here nor there. So that was my little tangent about the college football playoff. All right, let's real quick touch on a couple things just because I'm running out of time here. The NBA Finals starts on June 3rd, so that's tomorrow. Again, sorry about the late release. This will be releasing tonight, Tuesday, June 2nd. So we got the San Antonio Spurs taking on the New York Knicks. If you told me the Knicks would have made a finals 10 years ago, I would have laughed in your face because of how horrendous the Knicks have been in years past. But Jalen Brunson is a stud. Wembanyama, stud for the Spurs. I think this series goes 7. I really do. I'm just so beyond happy that OKC lost. I can't stand the way, this is a hot take, excuse me. This is a hot take for OKC fans, but the way they play basketball, I genuinely hate. The flopping is out of control. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 2-time MVP now and an NBA champion. Like, I get it. I get why he won MVP, but he is not the most valuable player in this league. It is Victor Wembanyama, and it's not even close at all. The way OKC played basketball, I hated. Such little cookie cutter fouls here left and right, and the refs, they played a part in that. But the NBA, I think the NBA Finals is going to go 7. I'm going to be bold. I know Wembanyama is basically unstoppable, but I'm going to take the New York Knicks to be your 2026 NBA champions in 7 games. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about this. The NHL playoffs starts tonight, where the Vegas Golden Knights take on the Carolina Hurricanes. I used to love Las Vegas. I used to vacation there all the time with my family, even though I was real young, so I didn't do anything rash like go to the casinos or anything like that. I was too young for that. But I've always loved going out to the desert, just seeing family. I always wanted a pro sports team to be in Vegas. So the second they got the Golden Knights, I jumped on. It kind of helped that Marc-Andre Fleury went there. So, and seeing them make the Cup their inaugural season was something awesome. But all those years ago, trading for Jack Eichel to deliver the first, Stanley Cup to the city of Vegas. And, I thought it was a spectacle back in 2023. And now here in 2026, 3 years later, Vegas is back. And, I don't know much about hockey as much as I would like to, but playoff hockey always gets me hyped. I thought the Avalanche had a legit shot at, sweeping the Vegas Golden Knights, but little did I know that Vegas was well equipped to smoke them and, sweep them in the series. But I'm going to take the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm going to take them to win it in 6 games, 4-2. And one last NFL thing I'm going to talk about. And this, I smack talk Cleveland quite a bit. But I'm a Steeler fan. And I enjoy smack talking Cleveland or Ravens or Bengals fans, just because I'm that kind of a fan. But I'm also a realistic Steeler fan. I don't know what the future is for Pittsburgh. I know I've talked about it in previous episodes, but really I'm just going to go on a tangent. I see all these moves being made in the NFL, and I just see Omar Khan and Pittsburgh just sitting on their hands doing nothing. Aaron Rodgers coming back, are we going to be viable? Yeah. Do I think we'll win the AFC North? Probably. Because if last year turns out anything, if last year is implemented any way to this year, Pittsburgh will be viable, but Pittsburgh will also win 9 games, 10 games. They'll win the AFC North, make the playoffs, and get bounced. I think this is going to be the second time a legend at quarterback retires in Pittsburgh, losing a playoff game. Big Ben did it back in 2020 when he lost to Cleveland, when they smoked us. And then now Aaron Rodgers has announced that this will be his final season. I think Pittsburgh's front office situation is bad. I really think they're inept. I don't think I like what they did in the draft. Especially if Philadelphia stole Mekhi Lemon for Pittsburgh. You can't convince me otherwise. But realistically, I think Pittsburgh is in a terrible situation, especially going forward. And hearing rumors that Drew Aller needs to be retaught how to do a 3-step drop or make simple quarterback reads or do anything else from just basically said, what were they really teaching at Penn State? James Franklin? Oh, man. I've just been on a tangent about Pittsburgh, but I can't wait to see how the season rolls around. I'm a diehard Steeler fan. I'm going to be, but I'm also a diehard Miami Hurricane fan. It's going to be a spectacle. We're less than 100 days from both seasons starting. I think it's before. I know we're definitely less than 100 away from college football. I'm not too sure about the NFL. But thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate you all. I thank you for, everything you do for me. I thank you for keeping this channel alive. I have so much fun doing it. It's really a spectacle to me. I'm beyond blessed to do it. It's fun for me. I don't need to be the next ESPN anchor, but I do love doing this because I think it's just so much fun. And that's going to wrap it up on this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted.